Nice fade, Matt. Thank you very much. All right, let's get rolling with this. Good morning, everyone. My name is Lori Ring. I use the pronouns she, her. I'm the elementary program coordinator here at Sources of Strength, former elementary school counselor, and I am Zooming to you today from Grand Forks, North Dakota. The sun is shining. It's a beautiful summer day. Matt, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, apparently I was Lori Ring there for a moment. Now I'm Matt. I go by the pronouns he, him. I'm excited to be here with y'all today. Just a little bit about me. I'm zooming in from Colorado. I have a background in social work, so excited to introduce you to the Sources of Strength curriculum today. So we're going to jump right in.
Yeah. A couple logistics for you all. If you have some questions regarding anything that we're presenting on today, if you hover your cursor down at the bottom of the screen, you should see that Q&A button. If you click on that, then Matt and I will be able to see those questions as well as the other participants. If you just want to go ahead and click on that, it'll open it for you. If you see a question that you also would like to know the answer to, click on that thumbs up icon. It will upvote that question, letting us know that there are a few folks who are interested in knowing the answer to that one. The chat should be set up so that if you are needing to message either Matt or I directly, we can see that. However, I don't think you can message other participants that are here with us today. And I think that's everything I wanted to be able to share with you. Like, feel free to put those questions in. We'll be sure to answer them all before we end today. But if there are some that maybe kind of make sense as we go along, we'll be sure to answer those when it seems most appropriate, given the content. So I'm going to get us rolling here into these slides. Our vision at Sources of Strength is to empower a well world. And we do that with this upstream model. And when we think about moving upstream in creating wellness, we're thinking about creating spaces where everyone feels connected to others, they feel like they belong. And when we work to create those kinds of spaces of belonging, it helps both students and adults within those school settings be able to really think about and practice those regulation strategies, work on repairing relationships as needed, and really helping to highlight and support healthy help-seeking behaviors as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Matt, and he's going to start us off with a little story.
Yeah, so Lori mentioned that we like to move upstream. So we use a story to kind of paint the picture of what we mean by that. So the story goes that there's a person who lives in this village situated alongside the river here, and this river has a waterfall. And every morning, the person goes out for a walk along the water's edge above the waterfall. And one day, as they're walking along, they hear a shout. There is a person caught up in the current, headed for the waterfall. So they spring into action. They dive into the water. They pull them to safety. They do CPR and they save this life. And it's this wonderful, heroic moment. And so the person is again out for their walk the next day along the river's edge. And they hear another shout from the river. So again, they dive into action and pull this person to safety. And as they're pulling them to safety, they hear another shout from the river. And they're like, wow, we really have a big problem going on here. There's all these people caught up in the current headed for the waterfall. And so they go back to the village and they activate everyone. They come together. They all learn lifeguarding techniques and CPR, and they build watchtowers above the waterfall's edge to save as many people from going over the waterfall as possible. Unfortunately, they can't save them all. And this person comes out to do their shift in the tower. And instead of turning left and going up into the watchtower, they turn right and they head upstream. And the people in the tower are like, hey, this is all hands on deck. We need everybody here to catch to catch as many people as possible before they go over the waterfall. And the person turns back and says, I'm going to go upstream to see if I can see where people are falling in the river in the first place. Maybe put up a sign where the slope is slippery, or I can help teach them how to swim so that they can get out before the current is too strong, or maybe help them build a bridge over the river if they're trying to pass it, right? We want to move as far upstream as possible. That's where Sources of Strength's primary mission lies, is to move as far upstream as possible so that we can build in protective factors and help develop resilience within our adults and our students, so that when waterfall moments come in our lives, we have more tools and we're more equipped to be able to manage that, or to reach out to the help that we need as we get into that spot. So we see a couple of advantages of moving very far upstream. One is that when we know that folks will have those waterfall moments, and some are bigger than others, and we see that we actually have an impact for those who might be headed towards bigger crisis kind of things in their future. But it's also really important and impactful for those who might just be stressed out because they have a spelling test coming up today, that they can tap into those skills as well. They really are skills for all people, students and adults. And so we again want to really move upstream. And we would really say that that's how we build a comprehensive model of wellness for our schools and our communities, is that we need to move upstream. Oftentimes in schools, it can feel like we're running from crisis to crisis to crisis. And that's those waterfall edge moments. And those, we are in the world of prevention. We want to prevent that, but we can't prevent everything. Those moments do come. And it's really, really important that we are able to intervene there. We would say that that's intervention that happens in those crisis moments. And oftentimes it feels like we're sort of waiting, or, sifting through the haystack, looking for the needle in the haystack of who's going to be in crisis. Whereas when we, again, move far upstream, we can have an impact on the entire community and how they show up and lean into resilience as well. Really like this story to kind of paint the picture of where we're going. We also, when we set out to create Sources of Strength Elementary, we were really looking to address some major gaps that we saw in the prevention, mental health, social emotional learning realm, that again, we wanted to kind of come at it from a different angle. So you'll see here the first one on the left there, at the top it says strength-based, and at the bottom it says risk-based. We want to really be moving away, and we try very hard within the curriculum to move away from a risk-based focus. That tends to be pretty common in our culture. What are identifying the risks and warning signs of somebody who might be in crisis. And again, that's important work to do. But what we find when we go out and we talk to elementary students, middle school students, adults, high school students, that when we ask, like, what are the risks and warning signs when you see somebody who's struggling, oftentimes they can really name that off really well. And then when we ask, what do strengths look like? We often get a bit of a pause or some crickets. We don't hear a lot of conversation around what does resilience look like? What does strength look like? Or what are the protective factors that exist within my life, or that I can cultivate and develop in my life to help me when there are times of higher risk? So what we want to do and address through the curriculum is moving away from like a deficits approach, pretty classic deficits approach in the realm of education is the special education, right? Like we wait until somebody has a sufficient deficiency, and then we give them intervention, right? And so we want to flip that. Like, how do we flip that script and have a conversation about what are the things that are helping me be successful before I get into a spot that's more challenging? So we're really looking to build a counter narrative around what does strength looks like in our lives? What are those resiliency or protective factors that show up for us? What are the leading causes of life rather than the leading causes of death, right? So in a similar vein there, as you move to the next one over, you'll see at the bottom, it says sad shock trauma. We want to be moving away from a sad shock trauma approach and towards a hope, help, and strength approach. The sad shock trauma is pretty common in our, especially in our public health and prevention fields. This is your brain on drugs with the egg frying in the pan, or at the high school level, it's really common to have a smashed up car out in front of the school during prom. And the intent there is to shock people into changing their behavior. And what we find is this is actually not a very effective way to change behavior. It can increase awareness around a problem or a challenge. But when we come in at this sad shock, like sad imagery or shocking statistics or traumatic stories, that it can increase that awareness, but it also can make those who are struggling feel worse. And that's the last thing we want, is to create a sense of hopelessness or inevitability when somebody sees themselves in those numbers or in those stories. So when we, again, flip the script and we move towards hope, help, and strength, that helps us to develop and cultivate and uncover what are those strengths and resiliency protective factors that exist in our lives. We want to create a sense of hope for all, right? Hope is not that I'm going to win the I hope I win the lottery tomorrow. Hope is that I can see myself in a story in the future that's more well. And through our curriculum, there's a lot of storytelling and exploring what that looks like. And we find that we can actually start to borrow stories from others or recognize that we have those stories within ourselves of what are the people, places, things that can really help me be healthier in the future. And that's a true picture of hope. We also have some great evidence at our secondary level around help-seeking behavior. And when we highlight the fact that everybody needs help in their lives in all sorts of different ways, we can break down the stigma. It should be no more difficult to ask for help on my fractions than it is if I'm struggling with a mental health concern or with a social concern with my peers. Unfortunately, there is stigma around that, and we've been able to show that we can shift that stigma in a healthy direction and making it much more acceptable to ask for help and also to connect others to help when they need that, which is such a powerful tool, getting people what they need when they need it. And then again, also building that the story and that counter narrative around what strengths look like, what are the protective factors that are showing up for us. So moving again away from that sad shock trauma. The next one on there is we really wanted to address the top-down hierarchical structure within schools and move more towards a collaborative approach, in particular around social and emotional learning topics. This is really done best in conjunction with the people around us. It is not the teacher at the front of the room behind a podium who just disposes or dispels all of the wonderful information about regulation to the kids, and they hear it and they take it in, and then all of a sudden they are healthy in their social and emotional ways. It's that this work happens together in a community, and that includes the adults as well. So participating in the lessons themselves alongside the students, modeling and showing up and being a human in the room is really powerful. And that's a powerful invitation for students to lean into that as well. And we know that that's the best way for them to be able to learn these skills is to do it alongside others and do it collectively. So we want to, again, move away from that top-down approach to more of a collaborative one in the classroom. And then the last gap that we're looking to fill is to really authentically move away from a fixed mindset. We are well aware that lots of schools and districts have been doing lots of great work in exploring what does a growth mindset really look like at our schools. And we found that within social emotional learning, there's a really powerful opportunity to do this very authentically. Unfortunately, or otherwise, that our schools still are pretty fixed in a lot of ways that would take some big changes to change, and things like grades and the Bell system, and that we do math now and then we do PE now. Like those are a lot of like really fixed kind of approaches. And what we found is that we, with social emotional learning in particular, can move towards a growth mindset in that we don't attach a grade to it, but it's something that we are progressing through in our lives. And that is true for the adults as well, that we're always have an opportunity to grow in our own wellness, to grow in our own social and emotional learning. So we've found some really powerful ways to work that in, to really authentically lean into growth mindset as well. So those are kind of like, yeah, what kind of paint the picture of where we are in this continuum of care and where we'd like to land with the sources of strength, and then also those gaps that we're really looking to address as well. And we do that by exploring this strengths wheel that Lori's going to explain now.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. So this is our sources of strength wheel. It represents 8 protective factors, and it was created by asking hundreds, if not thousands of people in difficult times when things are rough in your life, what helps you? And so these 8 general categories or buckets, if you will, were identified by listening to what individuals had to say. And as Matt recently just shared regarding this upstream approach that we have, by focusing on these protective factors, that is one thing that helps move us upstream and centers our work on helping individuals identify and celebrate those leading causes of life. So I'd like to give you just kind of a brief overview of what each of those strengths is about, starting with the orange slice, which is family support. We take a really wide approach with this. It can include immediate or extended family, as well as our family of choice. So the families that we grew up in with parents, siblings, extended family being grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins. It could be a family that we have created with a significant other. As well as that family of choice, meaning those people who aren't related to us technically, but they show up for us nonetheless. They have scooped us up and taken us in. We really feel like we're a part of their family. Sometimes people will refer to these individuals as my people, whoever it is that might be. And in one way, shape, or form, these are the individuals who support us, they nurture us, and they care for us in a variety of ways. Moving on then to the yellow slice, which represents our positive friends. They're those people who lift us up and make us laugh. They're honest with us. They're there for us when we need them. Oftentimes, we identify those positive friends as those people who maybe we don't often connect with, but when we do, even after a lot of time passes, it's like we never even missed a beat. We just pick right up where we left off. And we know that we can lean on them when times get tough. Mentors, they are those individuals who are cheering for us in life. They listen when we need it. They help us learn new things, new activities. They help us navigate life's ups and downs. Oftentimes, they are the ones who really see us for the potential that we have before we see it in ourselves. And they have a knack for giving us kind of that gentle nudge that we might need to help ourselves grow in some of those skills and abilities. Healthy activities. We're thinking about things that could be social, physical, mental. They help us regulate our emotions in healthy ways, as well as help create opportunities for connection and growth. And we often think about healthy activities as kind of 2 different categories. They can be calming, things like maybe going for a walk or reading or spending some quiet time in nature. We also think about those energizing activities, which could be things like going for a run or doing something a bit more physical or active, or maybe listening to some real upbeat music, just to name a few. Generosity can look a lot of different ways. You think about, we can be generous with our time, with our resources, with our money, some of those simple acts of kindness towards others, as well as ourselves, both big and small. They really can have a big impact on how we feel about ourselves, whether we're being generous towards ourselves or others. Spirituality, the purple slice. Again, this is a strength that we take a really wide approach at identifying, and it includes people, places, and practices that lift our spirit. They can also connect us to something bigger than ourselves. So we think about the root of that word being spirit and what lifts our spirit. We also, especially with the younger students, we take a simpler approach with the spirituality section of the wheel in thinking about thankfulness. Like, what are the things that we are thankful for? We know through some great research that's been done, identifying 3 things that we are thankful for each and every day can really help us to identify or boost our sense of happiness and well-being. The last two, physical health and mental health, we often talk about them in conjunction because they're both similarly important. Physical health, when you think about those proactive things that we can do to care for our bodies on a regular basis, such as getting enough sleep, eating healthy, staying hydrated, getting some exercise, those are all important to taking care of our overall physical health, as well as knowing that there are specialists and individuals that have spent a lot of years of their life going through training to be able to provide us with help and support when we become injured or sick. Right. So, for example, if we break a bone, we would go to a doctor. We can help get someone to the doctor, or perhaps we can get ourselves there. But there are oftentimes things that we need somebody with a bit more training and education in. Similarly, mental health, when we think about that, we don't want to think about it as just the absence of illness, but rather what are those things, again, that we can do on a regular basis proactively to help ourselves. And similarly, when even those pieces or those activities, those strategies that we use, when they're not quite enough for us and we still feel like we're struggling, there are others within our communities that we can go to. We know that there are counselors and therapists that can really help us out in those times when we're feeling stuck in some of those big emotions. So, for example, knowing that we have some of those other adults and professionals in our lives, mental health supports that we can go to, is really a great thing to know that we have those available to us. We have another version of the wheel that we created for this elementary curriculum. You'll notice we have those 3 individual icons for each strength around the wheel. Those were created because we know that some of these words, actually many of them around the wheel, are big words for kindergartners and sometimes for some of those older students as well, if reading maybe isn't one of their strong suits in school. And so giving some images for students to be able to connect with those strengths on the wheel in a little bit different way, just to help kind of grease the wheels, if you will, help them start to think about what exactly do those strengths look like in my life. A word of caution, though, there are so many things that each one of these strengths around the wheel can and do encompass for each individual. So notice that just 3 images is not nearly enough to be able to give a nice, full and rich picture of what each of those strengths can look like for us as individuals. And helping students to identify for themselves, what do those strengths look like for each of them? Again, using those 3 that are there just kind of as a springboard to help get the juices flowing in terms of thinking about what does that strength look like for me? So with all of that information, Matt's going to start us off and in terms of the model. What exactly does this elementary model look like in terms of implementing Sources of Strength Elementary?
Yeah, so we have we've had the opportunity to launch a number of different curriculums throughout our careers in schools and school districts of this nature, and really have identified some places where there are challenges along the way, and we really wanted to make sure that we were addressing that and making this curriculum or this program of Sources of Strength Elementary, one, accessible for all to be able to do, but also to make sure that it's something that is sustainable over time and that we can do it with as much fidelity as possible. Oftentimes these programs can feel like they're an extra that happen occasionally, but don't have a lot of consistency over time. And what we know about this type of learning is that we need to practice it all the time. It is happening throughout the classroom and the school every day, all the time. Our curriculum and program is really intended to support intentional approaches to social emotional learning as we go along, and then also to make sure that it's sustainable and it can be implemented over the course of time so that we can successfully impact students and staff in really healthy ways. So a big component of that is the coaching meetings. This is an aspect that we want to like think about and give permission for adults to focus on their own well-being. We do that through building connections with each other and really moving towards like a deeper level of personal reflection. And I'm going to dig into that a little bit deeper here in just a moment, but I want to show you our entire model first. So we have these coaches meetings that happen, and then we couple that with the classroom curriculum, which are lessons that can be delivered in the classroom. They're really engaging lessons. We've heard that the students very much so enjoy doing them. They're interactive. There's a lot of games and activities built in to keep the students moving and engaged with it. And then it's also personally applicable, meaning that the students and the staff, those who are in the room, are really the ones who tell the stories that build the content of the curriculum. We don't want to come in and say, this is what a positive friend should look like. We ask the question, what does a positive friend mean to you? And the students and staff share that, and they start to really build a normalization around that. And that's how we move towards changing and shifting culture in a really healthy direction, is inviting those stories and experiences for students to be able to share. Because we know that they listen to their friends differently than they listen to their teacher. And they're not necessarily more important than one another, but there's just difference there. And hearing what their friends do when they have a conflict on the playground can give them that idea or invite them into those healthy ways as well. So through this coaching meetings and also the curriculum itself is really how we're hoping to see and make that impact on school culture and the classroom culture as well. So backing up to the coaching meetings, I just want to give you a little bit more depth on this. The intent for the coaches meetings are to meet and build connections. The structure is to meet once a month for 30 minutes with a small group of adults, and you would remain with the same group of adults for at least a year, we would say. And what that's doing is giving us an opportunity to really develop deeper and more authentic relationships within our staff. We know that staff culture can sometimes be a challenge, and also coming out of the tail end of COVID, we know that that there are folks that are struggling and managing their workload and other parts of the job as well. And we really wanted to build in a structure to support that staff wellness and connection amongst each other along the way. So there's a guidance that we give within the curriculum, within the resources that come with the training itself on how to facilitate and host these coaches meetings. And once we've developed those deeper connections, we can really explore our own social and emotional well-being, as it's a lifelong process. And the more authentically we as the adults can lean into this learning and reflect on, how am I showing up? Is there times when I am stressed out or not, or or dysregulated, and how does that impact my classroom, is really important work, because again, it is happening all day long, every day. And often it sort of flies under the radar, or we don't even recognize that we may or may not be teaching things to the students that are, one, maybe healthy, but sometimes not as healthy. And so within these groups, the hope is to get one, connection, then a reflection on our own social emotional well-being, and then we can really reflect on, as it becomes a safe enough space, of how we show up in the classroom. Again, some of the things we do as adults in the classroom really serve our students very well, and sometimes it doesn't. And those moments are really important for us to reflect on, and we have to create a space that's safe enough to be able to do that. together in community. And that can really help us, one, as an individual to move towards wellness, but also to support how that looks and happens within the classroom itself. So really inviting that in and giving permission for adults to take care of themselves. COVID was hard, and there are some folks that are tired, and we know that staff retention has been a big challenge, and that burnout is a real thing, as it was before, but we've really seen it accentuated. And so building in a space where we are caring for our adults is so incredibly important, and doing that within the contract hours. Oftentimes when we do say self-care training. In my career, I've done many of those. And when I ask people, what do you do for self-care? Most often they name things that happen outside of the school day. Like I go on a jog, or, I hang out with my family, but very often, or what is truly absent from the conversation is, what do I actually do during work? And we work from the assumption that maybe there isn't permission or space given to be able to do that. And so we thought 30 minutes once a month is a time where they can truly come together and just be adults with each other and explore what's wellness look like for them. This is not a time for problem solving, student behavior or things like that. We want to really set this aside and make it for those adults. And what we see is the same process happens of social norming within those groups as well. When we share in community, what are the things that help me be healthy and well during the school day? Or what are the things that help me when I'm carrying a little extra stress? That starts to socially norm those healthy coping strategies amongst the adults in our schools as well, which is a really powerful tool. So we really think of this, I would almost argue 51% of the curriculum, because we need to have adults that are healthy, or as healthy as possible, or working on their health and wellness, to truly be able to invite students into doing the same. And so creating that space with these coaching meetings is our attempt. And also we see this as a tool to help sustain the curriculum over the course of time. Not everybody is sure about what social emotional learning would look like in their classroom. And when we are practicing it on an ongoing basis as adults, that will support the implementation within the classroom as well, which brings us to the curriculum itself, which Lori is going to walk us through, is this classroom curriculum in a little more depth.
Yeah. So the curriculum really was designed and written to be able to be facilitated or delivered by any adult staff member within the school. We do feel pretty strongly, though, that it would be ideal if the lessons are delivered by the classroom teacher, simply because they are the adult that spends the majority of the day with the students. And so they have many more opportunities to be able to keep that content in front of the students, whether it's the language of the lessons or the concepts that are taught. Learning sources of strength is a bit like learning a second language. And so having the teacher teaching those lessons really is helpful, like I said, to help the students be able to catch on a little bit more quickly. As Matt shared earlier, in terms of those gaps that we were also looking to address with this curriculum, thinking about that top-down versus collaborative gap. And as Matt just said, when we get the classroom teacher who is participating right alongside the students, participating in the games and the activities and the discussions, that really helps them to do some of that learning right alongside the students, as well as demonstrates that, yep, we're all learning this together and we all have opportunities to learn and grow over the course of the school year. So if we take a look at our Venn diagram that identifies kind of what is included in the curriculum, if you take a look at the center of the diagram, you'll see it is a Tier 1 curriculum designed to be delivered in the classroom to all students. They are designed to be weekly lessons over the course of the school year. They implement the active learning model. Like Matt said, we have games and activities. Talking circles are a big part of each lesson. And they follow those CASEL core competencies. CASEL is the Collaborative for Academic and Social Emotional Learning. And so their work identifies focusing on 5 core skills, which is this is going to be a test, self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, responsible decision-making, and relationship skills. Is that it? Yeah.
Well done.
Yeah. And so those core competencies are identified and they are addressed within each of the lessons for all grades K through 6. And then similarly, we have those 4 pieces that are common to all of the grade levels. Students at all levels will learn about and be introduced to the Sources of Strength wheel. They'll learn about some basic brain and body science, as well as emotion regulation. What is it, and what are some helpful strategies to help regulate ourselves, as well as connecting to help. If we take a look at the left side there, the K through 2 curriculum, it is 3 separate curricula, meaning each grade level, K through 2, has their own set of lessons. And so that content is scaffolded by grade. Each grade has 3 units of content and a total of 24 lessons for each grade level. Lessons are designed to last between 20 and 30 minutes. And there are frequent celebrations of growth, meaning every other lesson is focused on celebrating students and staff members' growth over the course of the school year. And then for the 3rd through 6th grade curriculum, it is one curriculum, one set of lessons with 12 units and a total of 34 lessons, designed with flexibility in mind. And that can look like the students receiving the lessons once each year over the course of those 3 or 4 years, depending on which is the top grade level within your school. We also spend a fair amount of time in the training talking about some other delivery models in terms of some repetition that can happen, and actually would be good for students, because we know that even as adults, we oftentimes don't pick things up and learn them the first time around. And so some repetition can be good for the students, we believe. Those lessons also are designed to be about 30 minutes in length. And rather than every other lesson being a celebration, there are celebration moments kind of baked right into the end of the unit lesson. So not quite as often as the K through 2 students, thinking developmentally there that the younger students need a bit more repetition. And so that was not quite as repetitious for the older students. Taking a little bit closer look at the K through 2 curriculum, the units that we're covering there are connections and community, engaging our strengths, and we can make a difference. You can see also a couple of the main topics covered in each unit. The first unit, we're introducing students to what is Sources of Strength and exploring their own individual strengths. In Unit 2, they're learning those brain and body science basics, as well as emotion regulation. And then in the 3rd unit, we can make a difference. We're talking about helping connect others to help when we notice that someone is in need, as well as navigating conflict. So we have some conflict resolution skills within that unit. And for the 3rd through 6th grade students, again, you'll see those first 4 units, 1 through 4. It is that basic foundation, the intro to sources, brain and body science, emotion regulation, and connecting to help. Followed by units 5 through 12 are each specific to those 8 strengths around the wheel, taking a closer look at each one of those and identifying what those strengths look like. And then you'll also notice that we have 2 transition lessons in there as well. The idea there is the first transition lesson takes a look at more common transitions, daily or maybe weekly. So things like moving from home to school in the morning, or back home from school in the afternoon, moving from class to class, or maybe some of those weekly transitions, like students who are moving from one home to another from week to week. And then the second transition lesson that comes near the end of the curriculum is focused a bit more on some of those bigger transitions, like the move from the end of the school year into summer, which we are quickly approaching. If some schools maybe have already gotten there, others will be wrapping up soon. That can be a difficult transition for some students, like the loss of that continuity and the structure of the school day and being at home, or the loss of that support and those connections with staff and classmates at school, as well as some of those bigger transitions in moving from elementary to middle school. And then also even talking a bit beyond in terms of helping students to identify and understand that there will be transitions throughout their lives, even as adults. And that doesn't mean that we have failed in any way, shape, or form. It helps set them up for success in terms of how do I implement my own strengths to navigate these changes and these transitions that come up within my life. So
Yeah.
again, as a whole, we couple those coaching meetings for the adults with the classroom curriculum, with the staff, the classroom teacher, ideally teaching the lessons and participating in them right alongside the students and learning with them to ultimately create this positive culture change through positive social norming. So I'm going to turn it over to Matt. He's going to share some information about implementation.
Yeah, so that's kind of the overview of the program itself. So now thinking about the steps towards implementation, we would ask that either go back to your administration, or if you are administration, have a discussion about who should attend the 2-day coaches trainings. We encourage more than one person just for sustainability, as we know that when a program lives with one person or just out of the counseling department, and then somebody moves on to another job, that we don't want it to just disappear at that moment. So we do recommend 2, but we need at least one person from your school to attend the 2-day coaches training before we release the curriculum itself. So you can, our website has the different registrations for trainings that are coming up. And also if you have questions around that, there are some like host your own coaches training and things of that nature. Please reach out to us to determine what is the most effective way to get somebody through a training itself. And then we encourage you to think about a soft rollout versus a full rollout. We know that there are varying degrees of comfort with the idea of social emotional learning, and we want to make sure that people are coming on board when they are comfortable enough, or at least curious about the curriculum. So we've done a lot of work in designing how to do a soft rollout in a way that is invitational, as opposed to like oppositional or like I am going to force you to do this curriculum, because we know it just doesn't work as well when somebody is being voluntold to do it versus have some interest in that. So we do cover a lot of that in the training as well, about how to go about doing that in a really effective way. Once somebody has attended the training itself, then you're on a list to be released to purchase the curriculum itself. Also within the 2-day training, what that person or those 2 people that have attended from your school will walk away with professional development tools, which are outlines, really robust outlines, and also a slide deck that has presenter notes on it, so that they, as the coach, really become the expert in sources of strength, and they come back to your school and are able to provide a 1 to 4 hour training to invite staff into doing it. So very interactive and fun training itself, and it tends to be pretty effective in getting people excited about giving it a try and seeing how it works. So those resources come with the training itself. So you can invite us to come and do it, but we really wanted to empower OL World, as we say, and empower your staff to go back and really be able to invite people into it in an effective way. We also encourage you to think about setting up those 30-minute once a month coaching meetings. That finding time for that, we know, is often a challenge. We encourage you to think about PLC time, or can you carve out 30 minutes from one staff meeting once a month to be able to do that, but fitting that in. And then the last step really is initiating the curriculum itself in the classroom. And as Lori said, we do really encourage the classroom teachers at the very bare minimum to participate alongside the students. But eventually we've written it in a way that it's very accessible, and we love for that primary adult, that classroom teacher, to be able to teach that. It also is much more sustainable than asking a counselor or a social worker to come in and teach, 25 lessons a week, which we know is just simply not sustainable over time. So how do we address that as well as we go along? So that's some of the implementation tools that we have for y'all. And then Lori's got one more piece here, and then I see we do have some question, or a question in the Q&A. Now is the time if you would like to hop into the Q&A piece there that to add your questions. So we'll get to those after Lori talks about who attends.
Yeah. So Matt mentioned this already. We really do see this as a kind of a two-person job, especially in some of those larger schools. It's nice to know that you have a team member right from the get-go attending the training, two people hearing the information, and then being able to go back to the school to implement this, to get it off the ground and maintain the sustainability of the program within the school. So that's why we really recommend that each school send 2 staff members to attend the training. Certainly, we understand that there are some smaller schools and staffing issues can become a little bit more tricky. It can be done with 1 coach per building. If you can get 2, we would highly recommend that. In terms of who, it really can be just about any staff member, any adult within the building. We have had counselors, social workers, SEL specialists, gym teachers, music teachers, librarians, all attend the training, as well as some paras and some administrators. So we get pretty jazzed when we have those classroom teachers in particular and some of those specialists and administrators who attend the training. We certainly welcome anyone and everyone who would like to attend. Just please keep in mind that the person or persons who attend the training, you maybe want to try to identify someone who connects well with students and other staff members, keeping in mind as well that, learning happens best through relationships, and those who have multiple relationships with other staff members maybe helps that uptick just happen a little bit more quickly. Thinking about those who can and maybe enjoy presenting professional development to staff members, those who have a little extra time in their schedule to be able to serve in the role as coach, to support those who are delivering the lessons and create this time and space and facilitate those monthly coaching meetings. So maybe if you are an administrator here attending this or listening to this webinar, you're already thinking about who those folks might be. If you can afford to have 2 staff gone for 2 days and attend the training, we would highly recommend at least one of them be a classroom teacher. If not both, but at least one would be great. And I did drop into the chat. If you caught it already, you can check out our website for those registration links for our upcoming trainings. In terms of cost, that's also another common question. What does it cost to implement Sources Elementary? So the training cost is $1,250 per participant. And the curriculum itself is $500 per grade level. We thought that really made for an accessible implementation model. We've simplified it a bit over the last year almost. And so again, thinking about that sustainability and implementation piece, if you can get 2 people from your staff to attend the training, all the better. And then $500 per grade level that you would choose to implement. If you have questions, Matt and I are certainly happy to answer those. I will drop our emails into the chat as well. Matt, do you want to maybe take that first question as I put these into the chat?
For sure. Yeah. So the question is about if you are working for a nonprofit prevention agency and the schools pay you to come in and they ask for this program, and they are asking for this program. So this is something that we've come across quite a lot. So as a community member, there's what we would ask initially, and we would maybe love to follow up and have a deeper conversation about your particular situation. But in general, as a community member working for a nonprofit, We would love for you to be involved in the best ways that you can in like implementing or also getting in and introducing the school to the programming itself. We would still really encourage, or we really need somebody internal to the school to attend the training as well, so that there is sustainability. We'd have to look at, like, we just know that coming from the outside of the school to be able to come in and be able to facilitate both coaching meetings itself and the lessons in the classroom may or may not be prohibitive of being able to do it with fidelity. So with somebody internally, and also working to invite staff into presenting or instructing the curriculum within the classrooms, as opposed to just simply having one person come in from an outside agency and trying to do a multitude of lessons in the classrooms. There's just some hurdles and challenges around that. We would say, please go and introduce the school to the curriculum. You can support them in the professional development. We would still encourage and finding a person internally who can attend the training itself, so that it can be sustained over time as well. So hopefully that answers your question enough. I know that there's a couple of different areas in the country. I'm guessing you are maybe from one of those that we are familiar with. Some of it's a lot more external agencies that are working within the school. So please reach out to those emails on there of Matt or myself and Lori, and we can maybe get a little bit more detail on what your situation is and give you guidance around that as well. So any other questions that you all have, you can put them in the Q&A now.
You can always send them to us later on. If you think of something as well, you can send those via email. We'd be happy to answer those, or schedule a call with you if it feels like that might be most helpful.
All right. Well, if that is all you've got, thank you all so much for coming. We appreciate it. Again, don't be a stranger. If you have further questions, we'd love to get those answered for you, as we know it's a little bit different model than some others, and want to make sure that you're set up with all the information you need. So
Thanks, everyone.
thank you.